By our show, I mean my show, Mike's show, your show. We're all here. It's all of our shows. Hello, Mike. Welcome to your show.
Yes, I feel like I'm on like Captain Kangaroo or something.
Yes, welcome to your show. So, what we really wanted to do, of course, we want to speak ad nauseum about court dates and all the rest of this. Put that aside.
Dale wants to. I don't.
Something more important has come up, really more important than that, and that's that citizens got up at the weekly business session on Wednesday, and they let the commissioners know in no uncertain terms what they thought about the idea of the federal government wanting to expand the wild and scenic area that surrounds the Rogue River. And you'll see that one of the guys that got up, I was really impressed by this. He was saying that there's this building, I think on his property or a neighbor's property, that is that between the river and that building is a hill of dirt or a berm or something. And you can't even see that building from the river. But the federal government wants to tell you what color you can paint it because it's within the boundaries, but you can't see it from the river. Really?
Yeah, and the obvious question is, why are we letting the federal government do this?
Well, because they've decided that they've proposed expanding the boundaries around the Rogue River so it will stay wild and scenic. Now, I like the idea of a wild and scenic river as much as anybody else, but I mean, I think even our environmental friends, and I'm kind of an environmental friend myself, I think we'll all agree that there are certain things that just stretch the boundaries of credibility. And one of them is if you can't see it from the river, if there's no way that you can even see it, why are you telling people what color to paint it?
I'm a little more hardcore on that than Dale is. I say, get the hell out of here. That's what I say. I don't want you telling me what to do. It's none of your business. Go away. If the state wants to regulate that, we can deal with that on more of a local level. But when you're fighting the demon that's 3,000 miles away, it's a lot more difficult to get things done. And,
Well, okay, so I will say then, from the opposite side of that I can understand that perhaps a billboard set on your own property that's facing the river that says "Eat more burgers" or something, or let's back ISIS. Hey, you can put anything you want to if it's on your property, right?
Okay, sure. Why not?
I think that as I'm floating by on an inner tube, and you heard about what happened to this lady that was on an inner tube. Oh, I got to sit. I'm going to get back to this. Apparently, there was some kind of train that ran into a vehicle that was on the tracks, and the vehicle on the tracks was set in motion and went on down the hill and killed a lady that was rolling by on an inner tube.
Wow. When did that happen?
A couple of days ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So, look, I believe in science.
Ban automobiles, I guess.
Or trains.
Yes.
Or inner tubes.
Right.
I believe in science, but I believe there just may be a certain point where your time is up. and maybe it doesn't matter whether you're on an inner tube or in your backyard.
Yes. Perhaps the roulette wheel in the sky is the one in charge of that.
There's God doesn't play dice with the universe. Was it Nixon that said that, or was it Albert Einstein? Oh, is there any difference? So I don't know. There are generals down through the ages that have said, I would rather have a lucky general under me than just a competent one, or because that's really bad luck. Anyway, that's sort of beside the point. That's not about Josephine County. Just relax. So people got up and they wanted to tell the commissioners what they thought. Now, we're going to play back the mostly opposing points of view, but there were two people who came in and said, we should expand this. It should be everywhere, or whatever they were saying. I don't agree with them about how it should possibly be everywhere. You'll see the one lady, she's grinning from ear to ear. She's so happy the federal government's involved and telling us what to do and etc. And I kind of understand some of the history of that as well, because there have been times when it's, you know, I really don't want to see that billboard for ISIS as I'm traveling down my inner tube. But on the other hand, I will say, and I told this to Mike at the time, and I said it to the lady, I said, you know, this place is just filled full of people who are opposed to your point of view, but it takes some kind of bravery to come into, it takes some kind of bravery to come into that kind of room and tell everybody what you think. I think it does. And I appreciate the fact that people are there, and I like it when you put up the different opposing points of view, and then people can look at it and say, well, that's bull, or that's right, or whatever. Hey, okay, it's America. We should allow that kind of thing. Of course we should allow it. It's ridiculous even to say that. Mike, what's your opinion? Then we'll start playing back tape.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that rousing approval of the First Amendment.
Believe me, there'll be plenty of opinion to follow during this, you know.
Yes, there will. Okay, so let's go to the videotape.
Dennis Dixon, Soldier Creek, Grants Pass area. Also chairman of the Mine Advisory Committee for the Josephine County Board of Commissioners. Honorable
This is
Commissioners
bad county
and fellow
audio.
citizens, I have an article
our fault.
directly off of Chaos Wild's website that's released on June 30th, 2015. And this comes from Peter DeFazio's website, and it says this. Washington, D.C., this is DeFazio speaking, seeking to protect a celebrated collection of world-class salmon and steelhead rivers, U.S. Representatives Peter DeFazio, Oregon District 4, Jared Huffman, California District 2, as well as Senators Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley, Democrats of Oregon, applauded temporary ban on new mining projects in an area covered by a bill that the congressmen and senators introduced. It's the Southwest Oregon Watershed and Salmon Protection Act. This temporary segregation measure will preserve the status quo and protect the public interests. DeFazio goes on to say, I stood on a rocky ledge high above Rough and Ready Creek's great sweeping bends, talking to local residents for the need to protect this beautiful wild space, said Congressman DeFazio. This withdrawal of any new mining in this area protect biologically unique spaces in my district, as well as support Oregon salmon habitat, safeguard safe drinking water resources for thousands of families in the area. Quote, protecting Northern California's spectacular wild and scenic Smith River, the key source of drinking water for many communities, and it goes on and on. He says, I'm pleased that the Bureau of Land Management has agreed to our request to put the mineral withdrawal into Federal Register, Wyden says. That decision ensures there'll be a robust process for public input, and that's headed our way. This is another mineral withdrawal. He quotes, protecting Oregon's most endangered rivers and preserving our treasured natural resource areas is important to the health of both our environment and recreational economy. This is another example of no coordination. They hadn't discussed this, as far as I know, with Josephine County citizens. And when you go into KS Wild and these other environmental programs, they are bragging on ECDC, KS Wild, and these other environmental agencies and affiliated groups literally brag on their websites that they're violating the 1872 mining law and due process. It's the law of the land. Now, I just want to bring that into the public record today. I think that we need to stringently look at these things. And I would recommend that we consider even litigating against the BLM and any of these people that are violating our county's resources. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing over.
Lack of coordination. I mean, the point to bring up about that right there is clearly this is the federal government telling you what you're going to do, and they don't care what you think about it.
Yeah. Now, coordination versus cooperation. Mike, tell us the difference, would you please?
Well, theoretically speaking, coordination is where you get together and you say, all right, what's our plan here? What are we going to do about whatever it is that you're coming together on?
Yeah, equal governments,
Right.
and the two equal governments, the county or the state and the federal, they say, okay, we have our responsibilities, you have ours, let's talk, you have yours, let's talk as colleagues, instead of cooperation, which is, we'll tell you what the rules are and you just agree with this. Thank you very much.
Complete acquiescence. So
that's right.
And you know what? Listen, if we just allow that, which is, and the whole coordination thing is kind of weird because you have to apply to the federal government to coordinate with them, and you have to meet their standards. They're not meeting your standards. You have to meet their standards to apply. I have to come up with this plan, and then I have to. There's a list of requirements of what you must do to accommodate them, not vice versa. You cannot submit to them a list of things for them to do to coordinate with you, and so that to me says they're in charge. And if it doesn't say that to you, well, you're not paying attention.
Well, I am paying attention, and one of the things that I've noticed is they've talked about it many times is the county commissioners. See, if you're going to if the federal government, BLM or whoever it is, Forest Service, whoever it is, if they're going to lay down their plan and they're going to say, okay, where's your plan? Let's look at the two of them, and then we will see how they coordinate with each other. Mm-hmm. The county commissioners have to have a dang plan.
Yes, that's true.
And they still don't have a plan. So the next time a county commissioner says, well, those terrible people in the federal government, why, they're insisting that we show them our plan. We don't have a dang plan. So if you don't have a plan, county commissioners, how the heck are you going to tell the federal government that they're not coordinating with your plan?
Yeah, and you know what though, and I understand, you know, when you're talking about things which aren't in existence now and would take, you know, huge movement of mountains to make happen. You know, in my perfect world, the federal government doesn't have anything to say about it. As long as you're not pouring toxic waste into the river, it's none of their business. You know, and I'm tempted to become more graphic in my speech about it.
Yeah, you almost did. Okay. However, if they're going to complain that no one's listening to our plan, you got to have a plan. And they've been talking about this for over a year, and they still don't have any kind of plan. And what's the problem?
How long ago did the federal government spring this on us?
It's been over a year. And what I said to them, and they're not going to listen to me, they're not going to listen to Mike either, is why don't you take their dang plan and then write it in Josephine County language or something, change some details that might match what you'd like it to be, and say, here's our plan. They're going to find that it's pretty much similar, aren't they? If you base it on their plan, but they can't even do that.
Here's the problem that I have with that is that then you're conceding that something needs to be done here. And
but this is not okay, but this is not their argument. They have never argued that the federal government shouldn't be doing this. Yeah. All they've argued is that they're not reading our plan. If they wanted to dig in their heels, we shouldn't have to have a plan, like the Mike Jones, you know, response, I would totally understand that. They're not doing that. Well, they better pay attention to our plan. What plan are you talking about there, Simon Hare?
Yes. No, I get your point. I get your point.
Okay. Let's let the next person have their opportunity to speak.
Okay.
Yes, in the back. And then next man will be you.
I agree so far.
Smith, Grants Pass, Oregon. I want to thank the Board of Commissioners for stepping up to the plate and finally presenting this resolution about the wild and scenic rivers inclusion. Josephine County, 67% controlled by the federal agencies. I think sometimes we got to look backwards to see our way forward. Historically, this county has relied upon natural resource production. Historically, this nation has relied upon natural resource production. What made America great was our vast amount of natural resources. What's going to make Josephine County great is access to the vast
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, just a little technical note. This is not our audio. It's not our fault. They cranked up the audio full blast. It was redlining, and everybody volume is going to sound like they're yelling into the microphone. That's not our fault. And with the lighting behind this guy, some of these folks are a little dark complexioned anyway, and so it looks like they're performing in a minstrel show or something. Sorry, but I mean, it's ridiculous.
Are you being a racist, Dale?
No, but just, those were racist things that happened. The minstrel shows weren't done mostly by African Americans. They were done by people who were putting shoe polish on their face. Good gosh. So it's not Ron's fault that he looks so dark in this picture. We're going to do everything that we can to bring you high quality, but you've already heard David Reeves and his response when we had high quality video from the doggone city government, and then he said, well, I'm not going to allow you to do that anymore. Thanks a lot. Well, I say thank David Reeves.
One of the points that Ron was making there about the largest employer in 1942. Now, granted, there was probably a lot less people here at that point in time, but what was a gold mine? Why is it? I mean, it's just assumed by people that you can't take minerals out of the ground responsibly without destroying the environment. I don't believe that that's the case. And, I don't know why we don't push a little bit harder on this. People are fear the boogeyman, which is the federal government, and they don't want to buck them at all. And, as for Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, I would suggest Googling them. Everybody thinks when somebody says Agenda 21, oh, conspiracy theory. You should look into it. I mean, it's an actual thing. Yeah, I wouldn't go crazy about it, but there is something there that we ought to be paying attention to, because listen, you think the federal government's a problem. Wait till the UN is a part of the issue. Then you've really got a problem.
So the big deal here is, and we could work this out. We really could work this out, because commissioners, for example, are supposed to represent everybody. I mean, that's the theory behind it, and not just a group of people, just one group of people. So not just KS Wild, like over my shoulder here, and not just Clear Cutters Anonymous or whatever. They're supposed to represent everybody, and I just find it's so odd that there are people, we have a lot in common on these things. Nobody wants everything cut down. Well, very few people want that.
Listen, virtually nobody.
And people were saying that. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Yeah. And there are a few people, but only a few people, are saying all people ought to be exterminated, so there's just trees left over. If this is the case, really, we can't sit down together and say, okay, this makes sense. Yes, of course, we want to be able to intertube down the river without being hit by a truck, knocked over by a train and killed, and without ISIS billboards in our face. That would be nice. Let's agree on that. But would you please agree with us that if you have a building that's behind a big berm and you can't see it from the river, then maybe it's nobody's dang business what color it is. If you want to paint it pink and purple stripes, it's up to you. It's kind of ugly, but I don't think there should be any regulations about that.
Well, listen, if you want to get constitutional about it, the federal government doesn't have any say here. Okay. And if you don't, well, then fine. But the bottom line is that they shouldn't have anything to say about it. This isn't, we're not supposed to be dictated to by the federal government. And that's where we're at right now. But we allowed that to happen, and that's why we're here. And, I just think, listen, is the state government not, a large enough bureaucracy for you? Is it not hard enough to get stuff done through the state or even the local government that we need to have the federal government in charge? Are we so stupid? Are we so ignorant as human beings that we need to have the overlord taking care of us? Is that necessary? Is it really necessary?
I think what happens, Mike, is that things swing back and forth. That it's like a pendulum, and that there are times when there's not enough protection of the Oregon panda. Have you ever seen one? Well, what happened to the Oregon panda?
Yes, that proves your point, Dale.
Yes, it does. And then there are times where people are telling you what you can do in your backyard when they can't even see over your backyard.
And government is not powerful and bureaucratic and cumbersome enough to do that. Why do we need the federal government and regulations stacked on top of one another? I mean, this
I'm in agreement with you. I'm in agreement. Absolutely. And so we're going to talk about this on Sunday. But one of the things that Mike and I kicked around is just imagine if you had county commissioners to say, look, this is ridiculous. You pick a ridiculous example, like the guy with the building I keep bringing up, where you can't see the building from the river. You can't see it. So who would even know what color it is? Okay. No, you have to paint it forest green. No, you can't paint it at all. No, it needs to be, oh, shut up. Okay. So wouldn't it be great? Imagine what would happen if you had county commissioners that picked up some paintbrushes and buckets of paint, and they invited all the media, and they invited friends from KS Wild and from Sora to come on down and paint this guy's barn in whatever color.
The KS Wild people would not arrive.
You could invite them.
Or if they did arrive, they'd arrive to protest the thing because they're the ones pushing this kind of stuff.
Well, I know a lot of them are that. And what you do is you go there, you invite all the media, you say, if you're going to shoot this, you're going to pick up a paintbrush. Okay. Otherwise, Jim Moore, go home. And then we paint this thing in whatever colors the guys like. And then we put the big county logo on it facing that brick wall or that berm where you can't see it anyway. And then stand there and make a speech about how you represent everybody.
Yes.
Let's use a little sanity.
I'm fine with that, but you're never going to get the KS Wild people to do that. They're not going to participate. These guys, they're so radical. They would like to strip everybody off the land and let it just go back to nature. That's their thing.
That's what I'm saying. There are people like that, and then there are people who want to crush rocks in the middle of the night and then roll through your community. There's plenty of people on both sides. Can we get the sane people? There have to be a lot of sane people. Can we get the sane people together to agree? And because really, you know what the bottom line is, and especially for all of our conspiracy-minded friends, the bottom line is who benefits from keeping these two groups polar, keeping them at each other's throats? Who benefits from us not cooperating? That's what we ought to be looking at. You want conspiracy? Who's making a profit or getting by with making us yell at each other instead of working together against a common enemy?
All
and
right.
The common enemy, Mike, is people who are trying to force things on us that don't make any sense.
Well, I would agree to some degree that you have to find some area of compromise if and only if you were talking about two equally opposing forces, but you're not, because the side of the lumber advocates and mining advocates, they are not fighting in this battle. KS Wild has won. They are the winners. They are the dominators of this area. Nothing is happening here in the way of timber and mining resources to speak of. Virtually nothing. So if you're gonna come to that place, you got to have to come to a place where there's actual compromise, is kind of an equal give and take between two parties. That's not happening here.
I definitely, Dan, I definitely see your point. I definitely agree with you. To me, it fits in with this category of I don't use marijuana. If you want to go ahead and do so, feel free. But what I don't like is I don't like the city government saying, well, even if you're growing marijuana in a fully enclosed building with padlocked doors and a sturdy roof, if it's got transparent or even translucent walls, that's really outdoors. Now, fellas,
listen,
really, I mean, that's lunatic. And I understand what the judge says when he says, well, not everything is permanent. I get that, but it's lunatic, Judge, to say that there's no such thing as permanent in this life. Do we have to be a lunatic, really, on either point of view? Really?
We should stop trying to solve problems before they peek their head up here. And that's this thing with the marijuana situation in Grants Pass. And I suspect that there are people in Grants Pass, in the political class that don't want marijuana coming to town, and they're going to mitigate it with this. No, you're not. And that's just, that the cat's out of the bag, the cow's left the barn, and 100 other analogies that would be really boring.
Just we will do the best that we can not to be boring. Play the next video clip, please.
Judy, be next.
I'm Carrie Rogers, and I live in Williams, Oregon.
And did you get that? And spell your name. It was
Rogers.
It didn't sound like what she said.
Yeah, I know.
Karen.
Oh, Karen. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
My husband works as a watershed habitat restoration ranger out in Williams. He attended a water use meeting the other night that your Josephine County Water Master attended. A lot of pot growers were there. They won't tell you that they are all commercial water users. All of the pot they grow gets sold somewhere else. And she, being a county employee, says her hands are tied. People can complain about the water use out there, but she can't do anything. She can't shut off people's water. She can't control the use. Legally, you're supposed to be able to use a half of an acre worth of water from your own well, and you're not supposed to use well water for commercial pot growers. So what I see is that our own county people can't control what homeowners do on their own property. Mr. Heck and Mrs. Walker mentioned homeowners along the rivers and how they should have their rights. I don't think that
Mrs. Walker is doing her own irrigating
rights on our own property. Not if it's hard on our habitat and our water resources. And obviously, for the first time ever, probably am against what you commissioners want to do. I want to see our wild and scenic area along the Rogue River expanded. It's good for wildlife and tourism. The county shouldn't be in the business of selling off timber or mining for money. Our tourism draw is our forests and rivers. If we can't increase our taxes, and it seems like we're unable to increase our taxes, we need to increase our only sustainable resource, completely sustainable resource, which is tourism. People come here from all over the world to see rivers and forests and wildlife that they don't have in their own country, so their own neck of the woods anymore, because they've all been cut down. So I ask you please to increase our wild and scenic area, and if our county can't manage it or thinks the homeowner should be in charge, let the state or the federal be in charge if we can't do it in a really good way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, we
Yeah,
could do a
just-
whole show just about this one lady.
Yes, we could. She wants the federal, or she wants, the government. Let the government do it. Everything will be fine if the government does it. Number one, this idea that, does she want somebody to come to your house and shut your well off? Does she want somebody to? Apparently, she does. And
that's what it sounded like.
Yes, and then she's talking about, well, you're only supposed to. I think what she meant is a half an acre foot or an acre foot or something like that for irrigation. I would wonder how much water Mrs. Walker is dumping on her crop of whatever hemp.
And she isn't Mrs. Walker; she's Mrs. Hill. And this lady was saying that her husband's involved in water stuff, but then he doesn't understand, and she doesn't understand that this water master doesn't work for the county. And she's talking about how the county can't control that. Well, yes, because that's not who the water master works for. And I mean, there was nothing that she said, including the way she pronounced her name at the beginning, that I can't agree with anything that she said. As I said, we could do a whole story, but I tell you what I did do. This lady brought her son with her, and her son, we were trying to joke with them a little bit because we'd never seen him before. Hey, you come here to talk about something? Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it's always good to see new people. We hope you have something interesting. Yeah, well, it's always nice to have new, interesting people come, hey, okay. And so afterwards, she runs out the door, followed by her son's trying to keep up with her. And I trotted out there and I said, hey, it's nice to see a new person. I may not agree with everything you say, but come back and say, more stuff. And the son's like, oh, thank you. And he's looking back at his mom like, well, this guy's being nice. And well, now why am I being nice? Because, why? Because it's nice to hear all kinds of points of view, even if they're full of it.
Well, and not only that, if she pays more attention to what's going on, she might, think of other. Well, she would be better informed about what's going on, and I don't have any illusions that this gal would perhaps change our mind. One thing that she did say is that we should increase this because somehow that will increase the tourism. Tourism is not going to increase one iota by the expansion of this wild and scenic situation.
Yeah, but Mike, don't you realize that she said it, people in other countries don't have the kind of scenic opportunities that we do. What the heck? But what about the Alps? I mean,
gosh. No, listen, that's just silliness. It bothers me. I lived in a very remote part of Napa County, which is right in the Bay Area. I was surrounded by forest land. Okay, it's very similar to here in many respects. A lot of the same kind of trees, everything. And everywhere in between here and there on the same range of mountains is totally desolate forested area. So,
well, I'm not sure what desolate forest area means, but okay.
Well, what I mean is deserted. There's no people there. Desolate's probably not the right word. Anyway,
I lived in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. for a short time while I was working there, trying to, help counter bad guys in other parts of the world.
In the forest.
Well, I lived in this rolling, just right outside of D.C., in this rolling area, not too far from Pennsylvania, and bunnies would come up to the back door, and deer would come and eat stuff off of the property, and there was dinosaurs out there, and I mean, all kinds of things were there that you didn't even realize were surrounding you. Almost everything I just said is true, and you would think that you were out in the farmlands. There was farmland all around me. So the idea that, okay, God bless her. I'm so glad that she came and spoke her. She didn't need to run out of the room. And her son is like, hey, Mom, the guy's trying to be nice to you. Okay, you don't have to be nice to anybody. Just keep your opinion. Do not confuse yourself with facts. But it might be at least nice enough to know, or at least a good idea to know, is my point, that this water master does not work for Josephine County. I mean, if you're going to get up and make a speech, it's good if you don't make a fool out of yourself like I do on a weekly basis.
Oh, I think you're missing something here, because she doesn't care if the water master works for the county. If the water master works for the state, and the water master does work for the state, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Okay. That's fine with her. She doesn't care who drops the hammer on her neighbor's head. She just wants to drop the hammer on her neighbor's head. That's all.
You just think that you can do anything you want on your own property.
Yes.
Well, yes.
Yes. Well,
I mean, as long as you're...
just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't out to get you. And when it comes to them coming to cap your well or put a meter on it or something like that, they do want to meter your well. They have proposed this before. And if the door was open for that, if they thought they could get away with it, if they thought the populace was sheep-like enough, they would be in here with their meters, putting them on your wells. And you'd be paying for your own water.
They would put it on your gas tank if they could get away with it.
Well, they're already doing that.
Yeah. Yes. So there are plenty of people in this county and elsewhere who welcome the federal government telling us what to do and how to do it, and they just think that's the way to go. That's their view of life. And so okay, it's one of the views of life, and I'm glad you had your say, and then we're going to look at it and play back the videotape like we always do. We play back the videotape and laugh. Go ahead and play the next Lisa videotape, and we'll try not to laugh before it starts.
Okay.
Helen Scott, left bank of the Rogue River, up about a half a mile past Robertson Bridge. I came here this morning to particularly thank Commissioner Heck. Commissioner Heck pushed forward the resolution in opposition to including the Rogue River upper stretch in the national system, and I really appreciate your work, Keith, on that to get it going, and that I also appreciate that I was able to go to the administration meeting yesterday where you three commissioners worked on that resolution, and it was just a delight to see you all working together for the interest in Josephine County. And I just have to thank all three of you for the positive work you've done on this and your research. And thank you. One thing, when Commissioner Walker this morning mentioned, there's some sort of strange controls that come with Bureau of Land Management on wild and scenic rivers. In 1978, a U.S. Marshal knocked on our kitchen door with the paperwork that condemned 1.25 miles of our river property, a length along the left bank of the Rogue upstream of Gate. We had a scenic easement condemned, and it's still obviously on that property. In order to put up a tent for myself and kids down on this 1.25 miles, I had to get a letter from the BLM that permits me to put up a tent for a certain period of time. And you can imagine what else we have to do and have not to do. It's very long-winded, but there are many restrictions that you've saved yourself a lot of trouble by if your resolution results in their providing or calling the river non-suitable, because your county properties are substantial and you don't need a bureaucracy on top of them. You do a very good job with your riparian properties.
Yes, you do a very good job all by yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? This gal was also involved. I guess she was involved in county government around the time that the charter was written, and so
right,
at some
Helen
point,
Scott.
right, at some point we have to talk to this gal, get her on the show or something, because
and ask her about writing it, and then also ask her, good luck in later life, Helen Scott. But when the commissioners tasked Steve Rich to take apart our charter, where were you guys? Why didn't you go to the court and say, hey, wait a minute, we're against this? And there was nobody. And the judge says, well, Steve Rich, you win by default. What the heck?
Yeah. However, though, in her defense, I don't think that she was involved in the amendments to the charter. and I may be wrong totally on this, but as I sort of gleaned it, that she was around during the time when the original charter was put together, which was around 1980, 81, somewhere in there. And the amendments didn't come along until like late 80s, early 90s.
Okay,
So.
she can skate. She can skate. It's a bit like saying, well, I was involved in writing the original U.S. Constitution, and when the Bill of Rights came up, I really wasn't that interested.
Yes, that's right. You know, people coming in and messing with my work.
All right, next clip, please. Jeez.
It was a tent with a foundation, though. That was the key. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is John James. I own 2 properties in Josephine County. I own one out on Russell Road in Merlin, and I own the only private piece of land within the existing wild and scenic section of the Wild Rogue River, the Lower Rogue River, Black Bar Lodge. So I can venture that I can probably address the concerns you should definitely have with regards to any more restrictions by expanding the wild section, because as Commissioner Walker alluded to, without a doubt, there will be a whole next level of oversight control that will be, if the BLM is not willing to pay the cost of that, they're going to shift that either to the state or probably down to Josephine County, which we all know we can't pay for law enforcement. So I don't think we can afford to have more people out there trying to administrate more rules. My father-in-law's gone now. He's the original purchaser of Black Bar back in the 1959, 1960, and he was there to experience when the BLM came in and effectively strong-armed him. He was forced to sell out his private property rights in the form of a scenic easement. And if he were here today, trust me, his blood pressure would be off the charts, because he was threatened, coerced, and ultimately blackmailed into giving up a lot of his rights to do with his personal use of his private property, which he paid for. I believe in protecting this resource. My livelihood, probably above and beyond almost anyone else in the room, depends on it. And I find that over the years, the BLM, depending on whoever's in charge at their local offices or out of the Medford district, can be good to work with or sometimes not so good. You've got a small group of people that have an agenda that want to push forward an expansion of this, and it's just really not necessary. So I applaud the commissioners for taking up this resolution and presenting it. There's enough restrictions, as the lady who just spoke a minute ago alluded to, even within the recreation section of the river. There's a lot of control and a lot of restrictions. We're not going to have rampant logging and deforestation right down to the banks of the river. Simply not going to happen. You know, everybody in this room probably lives in either a house made out of wood or stone. Those are natural resources that have to be used in an ethical and reasonable manner. And we can't block all that kind of use. So again, just to close and say thank you very much for taking up this resolution to oppose the inclusion of more river. It's not necessary. There's enough there now. And I think any reasonable person can understand that. And the burden upon probably the county and the private citizens would be more than anybody can imagine until you've lived it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That guy's a crazy right-winger. He wants to rape the earth and kill all the fish. That's what he wants to do, that guy.
Look, these things, as I said, there is a pendulum swinging, and at the moment it's about restricting use by people of natural resources. There have been times in the past where there was just people who went too far, and even governments that went too far on using up stuff that surrounded beautiful scenic areas. We love beautiful scenic areas. And so all you need to do is just get the reasonable people together and say, okay, this makes sense, this is too far, and there are definitely ways that we can cooperate and coordinate on all this. This is just sometimes going too far, and what we try to do as good citizens is just look at it and say, okay, guys, that's a little too much. I think you will agree with me. If you can't even see it from the river, maybe you're just being a little too retentive about this, and let's make sane rules. And by the way, this is not BLM's rule. This is set up by the Congress, and BLM is carrying out what the federal government told them it is your responsibility to do. BLM didn't make up this whole rule.
Oh, that makes me feel better.
Well,
yeah, no. The problem is that the people who are in charge right now are the kooky fringe, barely would show up as a sliver on a pie chart of the percentage of the political swing of the entire population. They're the ones in charge of what gets done and what is allowed, and that's just kooky.
So what we do is good citizens, whether we categorize ourselves as environmentalists or forest slashers or whatever you think of yourself as. What we do is we just say, okay, look, that's a little too much there, you guys. We know the pendulum's going to swing, but swing it back a little bit. The same thing is happening with 3 county commissioners who say, I know we're breaking the law and I don't care. It's just going to go too far sometimes. And what you do is you just help push the pendulum back the other direction. That's all.
The two worst environmental things going on around here right now are rampant forest fires and them dumping chemicals into the river here, right here locally. And we see this thing that has to do with, what is it, Colorado, where some mine stuff got dumped into the river. They're doing it right here. Yes, it killed a bunch of fish and they dumped a bunch of uranium and all kinds of stuff like that into the river. Hello.
Now, how did they get away with that? And you don't think KS Wild's doing that?
No, but listen, the government wanted the dam torn out.
Yes.
And this is what they're getting as a part of tearing out the dam, is this pollution.
Yes.
Now, listen, tearing out all the dams, I think is stupid, but whatever, you can have whatever opinion you want to have on that. But so those two things, wait a minute, who's responsible for those two things? There isn't any clear-cutting disasters going on right now. Show me one. There's no mining pollution happening around here. I haven't heard about any of that since I've been here, except for, the federal government coming in and harassing some poor guy with a hammer and a shovel trying to eke out a living on some little, minuscule claim somewhere. No. If they had examples to cite of abuses that were happening right now, I'd say maybe they have a case. But let's how about we cut some trees down and then we can watch this thing and decide what good policy is.
So the three of the things that we see at this meeting is, one is we're watching what happens at these meetings. We bring it to you. You don't have to wait for Jim Moore to write it. He hand writes these notes and doesn't get the quotes right. And so we play this back so you can hear what people actually had to say. You don't need a filter. Number 2 that's happening is these guys are saying, KS Wild is saying, whether you hate them or not, they're saying, listen, don't be dumping chemicals in our water supply. They're at the forefront of that. And now you're hearing mostly at this meeting, some of the people who are in the forefront say, hey, don't step all over our property rights. Well, we need all of those people. It would be nice if they were working together, but we need them all to watch out over, don't poison the water. Watch out, whether it's the government doing it or some business is doing it. And don't step all over our rights. Okay, we do have some kind of rights. There are property rights. This is an important thing in our society. And commissioners, stop breaking the law. When you've got people who are saying, all of these things are important to solutions, don't let any one get ahead of another. It's like the 3 branches of government. You don't want the Supreme Court making all the decisions. You don't want the president making all the decisions. You don't want goofy people in Congress making all the decisions. It's a balancing act. Don't let any one get way out ahead of the others and be dictating the terms. We should be is what we want. And one of the things we want is we want some kind of cooperation among the sane people, and we sort of marginalize those who are not so sane, which sometimes I hope doesn't include Mike and myself. Go ahead and play the next video, please.
So much to talk about, so little time. Good morning. Larry Ford, 136 Ferry Road, Grants Pass. While I applaud all of your letters today, you're going out, I think they're very important. Like the gentleman from Black Bar Lodge, I'm very fortunate. I live outside the corridor, but we have neighbors right down the road that live inside. A couple of years ago, one of them was doing some remodeling on his house. The Wild and Scenic folks dictated the color he could paint his house and how he could build a pump house, small structure on his property, because he lives inside that quarter-mile limit. Now, without the use of bulldozer, you would never be able to see his house from the river. He sits back on a bluff, but he's inside that corridor. So this legislation, well, it all sounds well and good to say wild and scenic. It really does not address the problems, and it becomes very restricted to what you can do if you own private property along the river. So I applaud these letters that you're sending out. It probably should have been written a little more stringently, but I know that you probably can't do that.
Why not?
The other one is, and it's been mentioned here, is the public television you guys use. My problem always been with that is it's county business, and if you live in the county, you can't access it. I think maybe we should look at a different way, maybe put it on the internet.
It is on the internet.
What an idiot. Sorry. Jeez.
I mean, I just think that if it's a county programming, it should be more available to the county and not just the residents of Grants Pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I talked with Larry afterwards, and I said, Larry, why did you say this? You know that the county makes it available. The county does, not just us. The county makes it available on the internet. Why did you just say that?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. He didn't have any good reason. Okay, say whatever you want. Larry's the one that always gets up and says, why can't we be nicer to the commissioners and let's agree with them and all this? Larry, that doesn't, but I love his example with the guy where you need a bulldozer. Yeah. Okay, so we didn't exclude this. Larry's not making any sense in half of what he said, but at least he's better than his wife. So she's the one that says that we don't have any website at all. I don't know what to do with some of these folks, but hey, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I guess, what does they say? Everybody has one. Play the next one, would you, Mike?
Jim Frick, Grants Pass, Oregon. I'd like to thank all three of you commissioners for doing what you did today. As chairman of the Southern Oregon Resource Alliance, we applaud you in actually noticing the arrogance of the federal government and especially the BLM to you, who are elected officials and representing the 80,000 of us in this county. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for that. I've been in the real estate business 38 years in Josephine County. I own the Holiday Motel in Kirby, Oregon, which is a tourist area because the Oregon Caves is the second largest tourist attraction, or third, whoever you talk to, in the state of Oregon. And I've got to tell you that owning clear down to the Illinois River, I have 3 parcels that I own either along the Illinois River or Sucker Creek. And in my dealings with the Bureau of Land Management, all I've found is nothing but a difficult time in getting any kind of building permits. I have a gentleman that has 160 acres. He started out with 140, but he had to buy 20 more in a forest commercial zone up on Upper Deer Creek, who fought for 5 years to get a right of access to his property so that he could develop on it. His name's Don Stark. I have a client that has property on Riverbanks Road that's in the Wild and Scenic, sits just above Robertson Bridge. We went in to get a building permit. They said, well, you're in the Wild and Scenic. First, you have to go to the Bureau of Land Management and get their approval on what your site plan is going to be. By the time we got done with all of the costs, the meetings, the interruptions, the delays, my client decided, I want to sell the property. I'm no longer going to build in Josephine County. That's what you're headed towards if you were to allow this. Second reason I'm up here is because I think that you guys need to, before this meeting on September the 20th, coming up on the proposed withdrawal and notification of public meetings, I think you need to get together with your legal staff and file a resolution opposing the mineral withdrawal for the 5-year period of time in the Illinois Valley watershed in the Galeese Mining District. This has been an end-run attempt, once again, by our federal legislators using the BLM to lock up more lands, make them so that they're less defensible for fire, less accessible for the people who have 1872 mining rights. And I think it needs to cease and desist, and only you three can do that. I say that the BLM is hosting an open hearing on the proposal in Alaska on September 10th from 5 to 8. We believe the resolution is called for prior to that date. The county should arrange for the resolution to be presented to the BLM at that time, should be forwarded to Senator Wyden and Congressman DeFazio, as well as Congressman Walden. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Amen. You know, I think that, you know, like he's saying, when you have more and more and more government intrusion, people, you know, who would be interested in the responsible development of their land for their own enjoyment cannot do it. And so they're going to go elsewhere and they're going to take their money with them. And that none of that helps the economy here. And, you know, these poor miners with the 1872 rights that are trying to eke out a living. Oh my God, they're hardly a threat. And to, you know, they're it's like the blob, the bureaucratic blob that is slowly, you know, enveloping more and more property and under their control, and just makes it less and less desirable to be in a place like that. That's all.
We try to keep this this show to about 45 minutes, and I'm trying not to let it go up to an hour every time. But there is a lady that, and I think that she's next, that comes up and she's got this big smile on her face. She just can't believe what a wonderful time it is to be a Democrat.
I can cue it to her if you'd like.
Yeah, I really want to be sure that we play her. She's just so delighted with herself, and would like to see this extended out to include just about everywhere. And I have to admire the fact that she came into this room and spoke up. I don't agree with anything that she says either, but it's nice to have, and we're more than happy. We'll talk about this coming up a couple of days about people who just absolutely will not tolerate anybody, not just themselves, but anybody listening to another point of view. Relax, yes. Let her say what she has to say. We're into that completely. Everybody should have a say. And if you want to know what it is that people are telling the commissioners, there's really only one place to go. And so is she ready?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Did you ask her? Okay, go ahead and play that.
She concurs. She is ready.
Hi.
Look how happy she is.
I'm Judy Reynolds. I live in Josephine County.
Pull that microphone down.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay. A little different perspective here. Recently, a friend of mine in Sedona, Arizona, built a habitat to hatch a monarch butterfly. When the butterfly finally came out, I told her its wings had everything it needed to survive, including an echinacea plant to eat. She set it free the next day. The survival of that monarch, such a small piece of beauty, is important because monarch butterflies, like so much of the natural world, are now threatened by habitat loss and global warming. Like our county's rivers and tributaries at this time of all times, they need greater protection, not less. I would urge the county commissioners to support rather than oppose the expansion of wild river status along the river. I see this as a primary responsibility of our county commissioners. Why? Because the value of Josephine County does not lie in allowing the few people to mine the river, to muddy the waters, or to do as they wish with their private property in a scenic area.
Can't have that.
The true diamonds in our backyard lie in the beauty of this region. That is where our brighter future lies too. Perhaps we have so many wrecks in Josephine County now, the collapse of our security system, decline in habitat, the erosion of civil public discourse.
That's us.
Looking to the 1880s.
This woman's voice grates on me.
2015. We need to look to the future and we need to embrace it. The Bay Area is just a day's drive from here. Population pressure will bring people to Josephine County looking for a lifestyle centered on recreational possibilities of our great outdoors. Please stand up for our region's #1 asset, its beauty. Monarch butterflies, rivers, and fish don't vote, I know, but that is all the more reason to speak now for them with your support for the Wild River expansion.
Thank you. Mr. Swift.
Okay,
Yes,
Mike,
thank you very much.
let's let Judy Reynolds there sum this up. I found it interesting that she's tying together the attitudes of the 1880s about mining and about timber together with this lack of civil discourse. She was the one that got up in an earlier meeting and was criticizing Mike and I because we weren't respectful enough and supportive enough of these wonderful county commissioners.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you know, Mike, that all this is combined together? Monarch butterflies, global warming,
Yes.
rampant clear cutting, raping of the earth with the mining, and people who insist on criticizing their duly elected representatives.
Yes. It's all intertwined, don't you know?
Golly. But I'm glad she had her say.
She
was beaming about these new rules. She'd like them to extend out to just, I don't know, 6th Street or something. I'm making fun. That's what we do on the show. She has her point of view. Hooray for her.
I
Mike?
thought you were going to push the kill switch there because that was the perfect. Hooray for her! That's fine. I think we aired a lot of opinion on tonight's show, and the two people that objected, they both got in there, and not all of the people who are for this resolution were able to be aired on here. So bottom line is that a fair airing.
And for those of you who like your story straight without any filtering by Jim Moore of the Daily Courier or by us or any comments or anything, we will put up these people saying their points of view, and we've already posted that so that you can see the whole thing from beginning to end, including all the different opinions that were there, or almost all of them, and you will get it. I didn't include mine because it wasn't on this subject. You'll be happy to go see that, see it for yourself. You don't depend on us saying anything about it, and bless you all, and thanks for watching our show tonight. Bye.
Yeah.